Hello, everyone, and welcome. I can see that we have a good amount of folks trickling in here, and hopefully you can hear me okay. Would love for you to post in the chat on your right-hand side where you are tuning in from so we can give some shout out to folks as others are joining in. So if you click on the box that says chat and type in your comment, it will be sent to us and we can give you a little shout out here. Alex, where are you tuning in from this evening?
Hi, Ashley. I'm in Berkeley, California, where we just received rain for the first time in a long time. So it's super exciting for me. I'm originally from Chicago, so it's nice to have just a reminder that there are seasons out there.
Yes, we got some rain here in Sacramento today as well. So much needed precipitation in California. Looks like we have folks from all over. Another Bay Area resident. We have Virginia, Atlanta, some highs, and we can hear you. Is great. So glad everybody is joining in. We're waiting for a couple of folks to join in before we dive in, but thank you for being so prompt to tune in this evening, everyone. Feel free to throw where you're tuning in from the chat, and do note that we will be emailing out this slide deck and a recording of the webinar for anybody who's a little bit late or has to pop off early, okay? Let's see, Oregon, New Jersey, where else do we have? Another Virginia. Wonderful. East to West Coast is covered. Well, we are glad to see so many folks tuning in this evening. What we'll be covering is what juniors need to know now for college admissions, and pretty timely topic given where we're already at in the semester. So I'd love to start off by introducing ourselves so you can get a little background. My name is Ashley Houston, and I'm one of the Empowerly enrollment advisors here. I recognize some of the names in the chat that I've already met with, and other new folks, welcome. I worked in higher education and admissions in varying capacities over the last decade here. And I am joined this evening by my wonderful colleague, Alex. And he also has more than a decade of experience working in admissions. He was a former admissions officer at both Stanford and University of Chicago. Believe it or not, he's read over 500 applications and considers himself a college admissions nerd. So love sharing the secrets of highly selective college admissions offices. And he's going to tell you like it is this evening. You'll hear it not so sugar-coated so we can get you all caught up. And Alex's students have been accepted to Ivies, UCs, and most top 40 colleges. So he'll be sharing all sorts of goodies and tips this evening. Thanks everybody for tuning in. So we do have a couple questions to kind of gauge the audience and see what do the following all have in common. And you can feel free to type in your answer on the chat. So multiple AP classes, honors classes or a challenging course load, SAT, ACT prep, elevated extracurricular involvement, volunteering, internships or research projects, creating your college list, and scholarship research. What do all of these bullets have in common? Throw your guesses in the chat. Some more folks tuning in. Pennsylvania, Southeast Georgia. Yes, this session is recorded and going to be shared after. Any ideas what these all have in common? I haven't seen a correct guess yet in the chat. Okay, Tony says they make you more attractive to colleges. All right, the answer is they are all junior year college application tasks and focal points. So we're going to be exactly promote. Good guess. All right, all the answers are coming in now. What wonderful. You guys have been paying attention in your consults already. What we really see is that according to the New York Times and College Board, students should start consulting coaches in their sophomore year of high school or junior year at the latest. So junior year is really a key urgency point to get caught up if you're behind. And really the earlier that families and students bring in a consultant or coach, the more time you're going to have to turn around those weak grades with extra tutoring or support, adding and elevating extracurricular activities to make your college application statement stand out and really differentiated. Do practice runs or mock college interviews and ensure you're getting higher scores on standardized tests through quality studying and even retakes. So definitely a very important year, and why we plan this webcast is to make sure everybody can get caught up and knows what needs to happen during this time. We really feel that junior year is the most important year of high school because it's the most recent full year colleges are looking at in the application process. So it is going to matter the most, both academically and extracurricularly, what you're doing. Take it away, Alex.
Awesome. So yes, really want to hammer down that point that Ashley just left with, is that when you are applying to college as a senior, your last full academic year is your junior year. Obviously, you're applying in November, December, January, where you don't actually have a comprehensive senior year. So without question, the most important year is that junior year. And yeah, there is a certain urgency, I think, to getting, the myriad tasks that need to kind of be completed before we are kind of in the essay and actual completing application season. So are you behind? Really good question. Have we begun studying for the SAT and the ACT? I know obviously there's been a move for a number of schools to become additionally test optional, but at the highly selective level, these are still very important, kind of more, I'd say, quantitative, while not objective measures that schools are taking very seriously. So making sure that you have a plan. When am I going to take the exam? Especially given the pandemic, a lot of things have been canceled. So making sure that you have a really solid place and plan to have some type of quantifiable evidence for how you're doing on standardized testing. Sometimes that can be SAT and ACT. Sometimes it can be an AP strategy. Counselors work with students to figure out what the best way of kind of showing your strengths in this area are. Then we really want to talk about how you're developing your extracurriculars. There's a myth in college admission that well-rounded students do the best in the process. That might not always actually be true. Sometimes students who are lopsided and a little bit more focused, who've been able to demonstrate commitment and consistency, do a little bit better in the process, right? So you'll be asked to list your weeks per year and hours per week. What are you listing as those activities? And how can we make sure that it looks as competitive as it actually is, right? A number of our students will do internships. How are we spending our summers? Any time where certain students might be resting or visiting family, we want to make sure that we are doing tasks that we can talk about well on our college application. So making the most of your hours, which at this point are finite, is going to be a super important part of the process. And then finally, thinking about the pandemic, right? I'm working with seniors now. All of them are addressing what they are doing and what they have done during the time at which some schools were closed, some schools are giving grades, some schools weren't. How are we talking about this and how are we justifying it? Working with a professional on these things can be really important in the process. So beginning to think about them now, if you haven't already, now is a key time to be talking about it. So the actual process of filling out your common application or your college application or your UC application usually starts right around April of the junior year. At this point, we do have those quantitative metrics we just talked about. We also have access to the college applications. We know what questions we're going to be working on, and we have enough time at that point to kind of build solid essays during the process as well. So there are ways to get ahead. We mentioned the summer period, and this is kind of a central time to be focused on making your application more than competitive, making it compelling, right? How do we maximize our summers, right? There are ways to get ahead. There are ways to be in your home and get ahead. There are ways to find internships over the summer. There are ways to get independent research opportunities. There are ways to connect with universities and really maximize your scholarship as a young person, and to fill out the things that we're going to need to on your application, right? When do you start summer planning? We should have already started it, right? In our minds, we should have already begun planning what we're going to do. Formal summer programs have deadlines, you'll see, that are within a couple of months from now, right? So we should have a certain idea of what we're going to do. And sometimes beginning to do kind of the cerebral planning behind it might be, hey, I've been playing tennis for a few years. I don't love it. Maybe I don't do that. Maybe I save those hours for activities that will actually make my application stand out. So there are a number of different ways that we can approach making sure that how we are thinking about summer now will actually yield results when summer comes. Like I was mentioning earlier, summer's really opening doors. There are students who do plenty of activities during the year, but really the way to get ahead is going to be making sure that we're investing hours in those activities over the summer as well. Developing our interests. So many good essay topics come from the summer in particular. So it's just a really good way to do some exploration, maybe do some writing, figure out what we're going to ultimately be writing about and how we're going to angle you to make you stand out and kind of zag where so many other students are zigging, if that makes sense. So we do work very specifically on finding out what your angle is. And we're not just thinking about what you do, we're also thinking about what everyone else is going to say in the application process. How do we not say that and still tell your authentic story is kind of what we focus on. Now is also the time to be thinking about who is supporting your application. College application in general is around 31 pages, right? And there are things that you have control over, and then there are things that you don't have complete control over. So you really want to maximize the things that you do. One of them is who you choose to write letters of support for you, right? So most of the time, this will come from a teacher in your 10th or 11th grade. If you haven't begun thinking about it, now is the time to begin making these kinds of choices. Who knows me best? Not necessarily who did I achieve with the best, who did I get the A's in? Usually it's who knows me best, who knows a little bit around what I do outside of the classroom, who knows about the ideas that are bigger than the class, who knows about the ideas that keep me up at night or wake me up in the morning, right? Finding those teachers and then preparing them, right? Helping them write letters saying, hey, I really want you to mention this in my letter for corroboration. As an admission officer is going through an application, one thing that we are very much looking for is corroboration. We see that you mentioned this in an essay and then a teacher mentioned it. Now we know, now we have a really good sense that you are governed for a love of learning in a particular area, right? These things have become more important lately now that a lot of schools have moved towards test optional and test blind metrics. We're looking more at the more qualitative aspects, right? So writing has taken a huge role in college applications, not just your writing, but the writing of letters from teachers and your counselor, right? Some students go to large public schools, some students go to smaller schools. Developing that relationship with your college counselor is actually a huge win for you in the end of the day, right? These counselors communicate with schools. It's really important to make sure that they know who you are and what you like to study and what you do outside of the classroom. There is a term in college admission for college letters that we call the standard positive letter, right? I wanted to share this with you all. It's a letter that says, hey, Ashley, good student, shows up, she does her work, she's busy outside of the school, she's good, you should take her. Admission officers read that and they mark it as standard positive. Why is it standard positive? What do we really learn about Ashley, right? Not very much. We learned that she's a good student, but guess what? We're applying at places where everyone is a good student, right? So how do we identify the teachers that can tell the stories that make Ashley stand out a little bit more over those other students, right? If something happened in class where you were able to demonstrate or lead or move people towards a different idea, these are moments that we want teachers to be mentioning. If you have a teacher that says, hey, this student is in the top 1% of students that I've taught over 27 years. Admission officers don't forget things like that, right? So making sure that you have support and that you're beginning to think and forge these relationships with people is a really key part of an application that a lot of folks kind of skip over, if that makes sense, right? So moving right on here. Being a great student is not enough, both at Stanford and University of Chicago. I would say around 3/4 of students had perfect grades, 4.4, 4.6 GPA, straight A's, plenty of AP and IB scores that are straight 5s or straight 7s, perfect test scores, 1,600 SAT, 36 ACT. 75% of the pool has that, right? So they are academically, technically perfect. Acceptance rate still single digit, right? Stanford still 4%. UChicago still 7%, 6%, right? So being a perfect student is really just getting us to the starting line right now. How do you choose among perfection? It's kind of a question that often comes up. What are folks actually looking for, right? So it's not just the grades and the testing. Strong writing. These students have written well. They've scored well on AP exams as well in the subjects that they need to. They have strong drafts. They have a strong extracurricular profile and personal qualities. So how do we find the sauce, right, that really discerns excellence from excellence? Part of that's working with a counselor. Part of that is sharing your ideas with someone who's worked in the field before. Part of that's knowing your school, not just knowing which schools you want to apply to, but knowing how you want to angle yourself and how you want to tell a story to a particular school. Many essays are like writing love letters where we really want our school to feel flattered. We want Tulane to think that they are the most special school in the world, even though there's 4,117 colleges out there. How do we make them feel like they are the one, right? So we work specifically on how we tell those stories to schools to make us stand out. You got to find your thing and you got to find it fast. If you don't know what it is, we are late in the process, right? So immediately beginning to figure out what those are, either through process of elimination or through some really self-reflective conversations, is very important. National recognition, outstanding ability with extracurricular activities. Some admission offices look immediately and they say, has this student done anything at the state or national level? They check a box, yes or no. If we don't have those things, it's not the end of the world. There are other ways to stand out. So because the application process is so long, we can look for some of what those other things are. Just like with the standard positive letter that we talked about a second ago, there are competitive applications, right? That's going to be most students. The difference are the compelling applications, the stories that you might tell or the essays that you might write that folks will never forget about, right? There are quite a few of them, and there are quite a few cliches within the process, right? So many students will tell stories about work opportunities that they've done, a sports injury they recovered from, stories that kind of just make us yawn even when they're told well. So what we really do is kind of dig through to figure out the special stories, the ones that are going to be unforgettable. Good writing usually happens in a team, right? So just kind of figuring out what those ideas are and how we tell compelling stories that other people aren't going to tell as well. Ashley, I'll pass that right on back to you.
Yeah, and here's where we come in, because building that story arc and brainstorming in the writing process, as you were just mentioning, doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. So we can help with this in a variety of ways. And a lot of that happens in the sessions our counselors have with students, having those deeper conversations about student interests and experiences and, differentiated thought that you're going to bring to an institution. So that, coupled with working with our writing specialists who are authors and editors, they can provide new perspectives and unbiased feedback on writing outside of our counselors. We also use a lot of data. So we want to be very accurate in helping our students position themselves and make sure that not only is the college list that you're building really well balanced, you have the safety target along with those reach and high reach schools, but that we are finding any of those deficit areas you may have either academically, extracurricularly, or in your writing, to make sure we can work on those in the next 6 or 8 months before you're really chipping away at the writing process. So data is important with our Empowerly score, and then also pulling in our research team. So if you have questions about, I see a lot coming in about the SAT and ACT registration process, retake, all of those we can tap into our research team for. Or if you're wanting to learn more about even acceptance rates for different majors at the institutions you're targeting, our research team can help with that. We also have former admissions officers on staff like Alex, who get tapped in during senior year application time periods to look at our students' applications in their final draft form and give feedback and recommendations on how to improve those applications and how you're going to compare to students they've accepted in the past. So pulling in lots of different experts. I also do want to highlight our startup internship program, because when we talk about extracurriculars, it goes beyond clubs, right? Many high schools across the US have the same types of clubs. So having a leadership position is great, but what kinds of things are you doing from a community impact standpoint or an internship to really hone in on your direction and build your thread, while also figuring out what you do and don't like in a career. So our internship program is a great way to get unique experience. And let me move our faces around here so y'all can see. But what we do is we actually match our students with unique internships at startup companies in the Bay Area, because we have all these really great partnerships. So the internships are virtual. Our students are all over the country and some even internationally. So we make sure the internships are virtual and they're part-time and across many different industry sectors. So you're not competing against thousands and thousands of students for an internship. This is a unique niche internship where you're going to get a lot of experience. So helping you differentiate your profile and really stand out from others who are at your school, not really taking the time to challenge themselves in the summer or even the academic semester. It can help you, learn some new skills that you can highlight in an application, certainly help you build networking connections for the future. You never know who you might meet, may come into play later on in life, and prepare you for interviews. Our internship program does have you interviewing with these companies. So you get that experience learning what that process is like and really stepping up. So that's a big piece that we like to encourage our students, especially junior year summer, to be planning for. It is the most important summer of high school. Anything you want to add in there, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. A number of my students have chosen to write about some of the work experience that they have, acquired during the summer. It's usually the first time that they have done an actual job where there are hours and they get to build actual work experience. If it's coding, if it's research, things like this, and just moving from kind of the traditional classroom sector to an actual work experience. Internship kind of motivates students to figure out what they're interested in. So I have a number of kids writing essays about that too. Kill two birds, one stone.
Absolutely. We have a lot of amazing outcomes too with our students who started working with their counselors by winter of junior year. So coming up here in just a few months, the data we've gathered shows that group was able to apply to around 33% more schools with enough time left, because you don't want to save all of this application writing for fall of senior year. It's going to be very busy, very stressful. The earlier you can begin that writing process from April of junior year through the summer, you're going to be able to get to more schools and the supplements that these top tier, more competitive institutions are typically going to require. And what we did see last year across the country was that students applied to around average 9% more institutions than in previous years. We also saw our students perform noticeably better on their essays due to having additional time and ability to resubmit for edits with our writing specialists. So in the end, they multiplied their overall admissions chances in some institutions up to 11 times. And really the big difference between getting accepted or rejected is in packaging. It's how you tell that story, how you're packaging yourself. And that's where a counselor is really invaluable. Great to run things by a family member, of course, having, that in-home support for editing, but an outside new perspective can bring a lot of value to pulling out pieces you may not be seeing.